Hello, Impact Speakers. Daryl Ross here. I got to tell you a quick story about a coaching client that I have. I gave a keynote speech in Michigan a while back, and afterwards, a young lady came up to me to ask some questions, and she's an emerging speaker, wants to go into the industry. She's done some small speeches, but she has a pretty big one coming up in a couple of weeks. So she asked the question, what makes a great speech? And I thought that was so interesting. So she kind of came on to be a coaching client, but what I did was, before we got to the content, we worked on what I call the 3 foundational truths. And I'll share it with you right now. So first thing I was sharing was, ever been to a conference where a speaker is speaking? It could be a meeting in your office. It could even be church, right? And you know what happens? You make a judgment about that speaker about the first 30 to 60 seconds, don't you? I know I do. We shouldn't. We always keep hearing, don't prejudge. But we all prejudge, don't we? So there's some reasons why that happens. So I'm going to walk through some of the areas even before we dig into content that we can do to make sure it is a great speech, all right? Number 1, you want to command the stage, have energy, and be enthusiastic. Now, that kind of seems like common sense, but we now know that's not common practice. We've seen many speakers, or whether it be at a meeting and a conference, not have that kind of energy. So you want to come out with some command. You want to have great positive projection and definitely enthusiasm. I didn't realize how much enthusiasm is a skill set, that I leaned into that really early in my career. But I thought I was being fun. Didn't think that that really mattered. Years ago, my wife attended a conference with me, and she kind of sat in the back with the kids. I wanted to bring them along to kind of see what it was like. So no one in the audience knew my wife was there. So I'm doing my presentation. It went well. And then later that night, we're talking in the car about, how things went. And she said, when I came out and about 20, 30 seconds in, a lady near her said, "Ooh, this is going to be good." And I went, "Oh, really?" Now, I was happy that she said that, but I didn't quite get it because, to be honest, in my mind, I had a really good section coming up about 20 minutes in. I was like, "You mean the section on?" She said, No. She means like when you first came out." And I went, "Well, I didn't really do anything when that first came out." And my wife goes, "You were kind of fun. You had a good energy about you, right?" And I never forgot that one. That's a skill set. It matters because, like I mentioned, we all kind of prejudge, and that very first moment, 30 to 60 seconds, you can make the difference on how the audience connects with you or not. So just keep that in mind, have command, have energy, and be enthusiastic. People like to be around people that make them feel good, so have enthusiasm. Number 2, I wholeheartedly believe in memorizing the first 30 to 60 seconds of your presentation. It really sets you up for success. Your mind kicks in to where this is familiar. It is that muscle memory with your content, even the pattern, the energy, and it sets you up for success within your presentation. Now, here's a funny thing. It also kind of helps you with some nerves. People often ask me, "Daryl, you still get nervous?" I've been speaking over 15 years. Yes, I still get nervous. I enjoy it though. I put it into a more positive mindset. But bottom line is, I've memorized the beginning to where now it channels me for success. I'm aware what's coming, and it gets me in a good place with the presentation and the audience. So memorize your first 30 to 60 seconds. Number 3, the big kahuna, practice. I know you're thinking, okay, Daryl, practice and then what? No, there's no and then what. It's practice. More and more people don't practice their craft. I had a great Zoom coaching call with a client of mine, and she was asking me my opinion of the story she tells in her speech. There's one of 2 ways she could do it, and so I simply said, well, when you practice it, which scenario do you practice the most? Scenario A or scenario B? And she goes, well, it kind of depends on the audience. I go, no, I got that. It's always kind of different with the audience, but when you are with it alone, privately, practicing, which one do you lean into the most? And she kind of started laughing. I guess I don't practice enough, do I? So, she knew it herself. We don't practice enough. This is a thing where this industry requires the same amount of practice and effort than any other industry. They say practice makes perfect. No, practice makes improvement. And I learned that from a dear friend of mine, Mary. She's part manager of a bakery up in New England. And Mary, now years ago, not so much now because she's kind of a seasoned pro, but years ago when she'd get an order for a wedding cake, you know what she would do? She'd make a practice wedding cake. No lie, the entire thing. And her team members would eat it to test it out. I was like, what? You'd make yep, I didn't want that pressure. I wanted to make sure it was perfect. And I said, you know what? It may not be financially the best decision, but man, professionally, that is a great example of practicing, right? I was sharing with my son recently, he's 14, about Steph Curry. If you don't know who he is, he plays basketball for the Golden State Warriors, widely known the best shooter ever, okay? Now in a game, like he just makes the shot a lot. Like you're thinking, is he getting lucky? What's going on there? And then you read his story that after a long practice, most of the players are already going home. You know what he's doing? He'll shoot 100 free throws at the end of practice. So you got to ask yourself, is that luck? Or is he actually building up that skill set, that muscle memory to where the shot's always going to fall for him, or more likely than not? So I think practice is a huge part of being a speaker as well. Go through it. By the way, I mentioned earlier about possibly memorizing your first 30 to 60 seconds. Hey, practice that. You should know specifically what you're going to say. How? You're going to say, thank you so much, or I appreciate that, or thrilled to be here. What are your exact words? Memorize it, practice it, and put it into your presentation. So, quick recap. Number one, command the stage. Have energy, positive projection, and definitely be enthusiastic. Number two, memorize the first 30 to 60 seconds of your presentation. Can't tell you how helpful that is. And finally, practice. Remember, practice does not make perfect. Practice makes improvement, and you can be on your way to having a great speech. So this is part one of the What Makes a Great Speech series. But in the